Hey everybody, good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Jason. I'm with AV Pro Global and Murideo, and today we're going to be covering a very special product we've been working on very hard for about 2 years, and that's going to be the 7G generator. We're going to go through and cover some of the big features and talk about some of the testing you can do with this device. And during the presentation, we're going to cut over to our CTO, Matt Murray, who is currently in Sioux Falls, South Dakota at the headquarters in our lab. And we're going to see some of these tests live, and you guys will be able to see exactly what this machine is capable of. So good, thank you so much for joining. I do have Tom Devine. He is here with me. He is in the background. He's going to be watching the chat box and the question box. If you guys do have any questions during the presentation, feel free to type those in. Tom will do his best to get those questions answered. I will check throughout the presentation to see if there's any that I can answer, and then we have Matt here as well. So if you have any questions during the presentation, go ahead and fill out the question box. If not, we can take some questions at the end too. So thank you so much for being here. Okay, let's get started. We have a lot to cover in an hour. So company overview. If you guys have used Murideo products before, if you have been our customer before, thank you so much for your continued support. We're pushing hard to get new products that are innovative and really to make your lives a lot easier. We've been in this space since about 2013. We came up with a field generator and analyzer, the Murideo 6A and 6G, which a lot of you might be familiar with. That was the first of its kind, and we're kind of doing that all over again with the 7G, making another first of its kind product. So, our whole goal as a company is to make test equipment and test devices that are easy for you guys to use and make your lives a lot easier when you're maybe you're a manufacturer and you're testing TVs or AVRs or extenders, or maybe you're a calibrator in the field or a residential or commercial installer. Our whole goal is to make products easy for you guys to make your lives a lot easier. We've been doing this now for several years. The hardware that we use is all done designed in house. We use FPGA chips. We're not using some pre-programmed chips, so that gives us a lot of freedom to be able to do things with firmware and to do some really cool custom trick things that a lot of other companies can't do. Again, my name is Jason. I've been with the company now for 3 years. Been having a blast. We teach AV Pro Academy classes all over the country. We teach ISF classes all over the world. I hope you guys have seen some of our webinars before. If not, we've got some good material up on our Murideo YouTube page and the AV Pro Global YouTube page if you want to check some of that stuff out. But like I said, I do see some familiar names on the attendee list, so thank you guys so much for the continued support. So again, this webinar is all about the 7G generator. So I just wanted to cover, before we get started looking at some of the tests and some of the things that it's capable of, just wanted to go over some of the main features and some of the things that should get you guys really excited about this piece. Number one, to be a Dolby approved signal generator, their testing is very stringent. They're very, very exclusive. And they just want to make sure that a product is going to work up to their standards, which I totally understand. We worked with them for 2 years on this product, and we're the only product right now that's both Dolby Vision and Dolby Audio approved. When we're able to do certain tests for like Dolby Atmos and Dolby Vision at the same time, you've never been able to do that before, and now you can. So this is a very exciting time for us. Some of the big features about the 7G generator: we're able to test ARC and eARC. That's huge right now. eARC is part of the HDMI 2.1 spec, but we are seeing it in some HDMI 2.0 products. Older products that only have HDMI 2.0 have been getting firmware updated, and they're adding in eARC via firmware. So being able to test for eARC and make sure that those signals are correct and getting to the right place is super, super important right now. 120 frames per second. The first time I saw this with my own eyes, it was a little strange, but I got used to it rather quickly, and it's cool. The gamers are very excited about 120 frames per second. Anybody who's ever watched sports is excited about 120 frames per second. That football is not going to blur across the field anymore. It'll be nice and tight, and you'll be able to follow it really easily. So the 120 frames per second is a big deal, and the 7G generator can do it right out of the box. Some of the tests that we're going to look at today: AV sync test, audio and video latency test, things for lip sync. That's the bane of some installers' existence. I talk to installers all over the world all the time, and they're continually getting service calls for things like the lips and the voice don't match up with each other, is what customers usually say. So being able to test for that while you're on site doing the install or doing the calibration, go ahead and test for that too, and get that out of the way. If you're a manufacturer, maybe a display manufacturer, AVR manufacturer, you also want to be able to test the input lag and the latency, so you can tweak your product a little bit to make that stuff as fast as possible to make a superior product. All flavors of HDR supported, just like a lot of our other Murideo gear, especially the 6A and 6G. So we can do, of course, Dolby Vision and HDR, HDR10, HLG, and then of course all your standard dynamic range formats and resolutions. There are a ton of test patterns in the 7G generator. We're going to talk a little bit more in depth on those a little bit later in the presentation, but I mean, guys, we're talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of test patterns. We teamed up with a few different companies to get a lot of test patterns on the machine. You guys see on the screen here, we work closely with the ISF, the Professional Video Alliance, Spears & Munsell, Sony, Portrait Displays, Bill Wetzel, and then we even, of course, have our own Murideo test patterns on there as well. For those of you who like to do custom test patterns, or maybe you have some custom video clips that you'd like to upload, we've got 1.5 terabytes of hard drive space total on the 7G. So uploading your own test patterns, uploading your own video clips, absolutely not a problem. And we purposefully put a USB 3.0 port that will cover in a little bit on the back of the unit, so that you make sure that those uploads go nice and fast for you. So yeah, lots of cool stuff going on here. We're going to touch on quite a bit of it here in the next hour. So first, I want to show you guys just kind of a quick, give you a quick tour guide of the unit itself, just so you can kind of get familiar with the screens and the buttons and kind of how you navigate through some of these menus. So one of my favorite things about the 7G is we've got this nice big 7-inch 1080p OLED screen right here on the front. Very easy to read, very easy to navigate through the menus. Down below, section B, you'll see this little status bar that's just below the blue screen. I've got a close-up of that on the next slide, but with that, the data in there is everything that's happening with the generator at that time. So like, for example, with the 6G, if I was in the middle of something and maybe I'm working on multiple displays and I can't remember, oh, what did I set the resolution to on this generator? I've got to go back a couple pages and kind of figure it out. The status bar on the 7G, that's up there 100% of the time. So at any point, you can just take a quick glance down and make sure that your resolution's correct, your frame rate's correct, chroma subsampling, color space, bit depth, all those types of things. And then just below the status bar are the buttons and a couple more LED indicator lights. So you'll see, let me grab my pointer here. You'll see some buttons here at the very bottom of the unit. And those are going to be the buttons that you use to navigate through menus. There's specific discrete buttons to get straight to like HDR menus or EDID menus or HDCP menus and things like that. Above these buttons are a few LED status lights. So for example, if you're outputting a Dolby Vision format, this Dolby Vision light will be lit up. So it's very easy to navigate through the menu and set your output to whatever you want. And if you're ever not sure what you set it to, it's a very quick glance down, very easy to use. You can glance down really quick, see what audio format you're in, see what video format you're in, check the specific specs like resolution and frame rate and things like that. So let's take a look at the status bar a little bit closer. Here it is zoomed in. So at any time, we can look down here and we can see, okay, the resolution is set to 1080p, 60 frames per second. We're using an HDMI connection. And just FYI, if you are adapting HDMI to DVI to send a DVI signal through a system, that's no big deal. You just have to make sure to set the generator to DVI. In this case, we were using HDMI, so no big deal. The HDCP in this case, we had it turned off, but of course you can set that to 2.2, 2.0, 2.3, whatever you want to do. Your color space, in this particular case, it was RGB 0 to 255. Color depth was at 8-bit. Wide color gamut was disabled. It shows us that we're outputting a PCM audio signal, 48K, 16-bit, frequency sweeps of 1 kilohertz here. So again, 2-channel audio. Everything that you need to know about the output of the 7G is right here in an easy to read screen. I thought that was very cool and very convenient. Here's a quick look at the back of the unit. There's a lot going on here, so I wanted to go through this with you guys and kind of explain what you can do here. So what you'll notice at the very left side of the screen, you've got a port here labeled visual probe and then microphone input. We'll get a little deeper into this later, but these are things that we're going to use to do some of the latency and lip sync tests. Just below that's an HDMI output and input. Output, of course, is what's going to send signal out. And because we are testing ARC and eARC signals, we also have an input here as well. Maybe you have an external audio source, maybe a specific piece of music you want to listen to judge an audio system or to set things up or whatever that case might be. We gave you an external audio input here, and you can navigate to that external audio input in the screen. I'll show you that in a little bit. There's several ways to control the unit. Number one is IP. We can connect this 7G generator to a network, open up a web browser, log in, and we can see everything that's going on with the 7G and have some control over it as well. We can also do this over RS-232. You can control it over that. There's also another serial connection here. We give you the adapter to wire that up if you need to. Of course, there's also USB. We're going to use this USB port to not only upload maybe custom test patterns and custom video clips, but also for things like firmware updates. To the left of the USB port are a fiber optic and a digital coax output. Again, because we can do audio testing with this device, we wanted to give you guys multiple ways to output audio. So we could go HDMI, we can go digital coax, we can go fiber. So regardless of the situation you're in for audio, you're going to be able to test for all of it. And just above the USB buttons, you've got your connector here for the power supply, and then you've got just a real simple on-off rocker switch here for the power. So if you're ever in a situation where you need to power cycle the unit, you can look back there. It could be in the complete darkness, and you can just kind of feel for the button and do a quick power cycle if you ever need to. So we try to give you a lot of space back here. We try to make it very, very easy. So cool. That's the back of the unit. Let's go ahead and move on to the accessories. So you're going to have a handful of accessories that come with the 7G. I want to cover those just so you know exactly what everything is. Number one's the power supply. Pretty straightforward, normal power supply, 12 volt, 3 amps. We also give you a tripod. There's plenty of situations where you might be doing some troubleshooting work or maybe calibrating a video wall, and you might not be necessarily in a place where you can set the generator down on a desk or something like that. So you know, I'm envisioning maybe calibrating a video wall in a big restaurant or something like that, and putting the 7G on a tripod close to where I'm standing, or maybe even up close to where the meters are. But we do give you that tripod. Just above the tripod is a little 3-pin Phoenix connector. If you want to use the serial connection on the back of the 6G, the 7G, we do give you that adapter as well. Also, this blue USB cable, that's an A to A USB cable. We specifically used A to A because we wanted to take advantage of the USB 3.0 and get those files uploaded to the machine as fast as possible. Now, the two new things that might look unfamiliar to most people, we've got a light sensitive diode here with a little suction cup. This is what we're going to use to do some of our latency tests. We also have a small microphone over here that comes with a little like a lapel clip. We're going to use these two pieces to do some of our lip sync tests, some of our audio, and some of our video latency tests as well. Now, just to take a quicker look at those pieces, here's the microphone and the diode. Here's a perfect example of something you can do with the 7G. So let's say that I'm a matrix switch or extender manufacturer, and I want to measure how much latency my device is adding into the system, so I can go back and I can get with the engineers and I can get rid of it, right? So the signal flow here is I've got the, first what I would probably want to do is I'd want to connect the 7G directly to the TV, run the test, and see exactly how much in milliseconds, exactly what the delay is like. Then I can run the 7G through an extender or a matrix switch, run the test again. If the numbers are different, then I know that this device is adding some latency. So now I can go back to engineering team, or I can go back to, if I'm in an installation, I can go back to another device in the system, maybe even the matrix switch itself, and I can adjust the delay to match up so that the customer gets a even arrival of audio in the video, and the voices and lips and all match up exactly like they're supposed to. So you can run multiple tests on this. At the same time as I'm doing the latency test, I can also pump some different signals through here to make sure that the switches or the extenders are working properly, making sure that Dolby Vision is passing correctly, making sure that 4K is passing correctly. I can also use the 7G generator with a 6A analyzer, and I can test these HDMI cables in the system as well to make sure that they're performing to spec. So lots of cool things you can do here, and we're going to get a little deeper into that as we go here through the presentation. So just a few of the main features I wanted to cover with the 7G, and a few different ways you can control it, and a few of the cool things you can do with the reporting. So there are some HDMI 2.1 features already in the unit. Like I said, for eARC, 120 frames per second. It's going to come like that out of the box, no big deal. Audio input lag testing. We're going to see that live with Matt here in a few slides, so you guys can see exactly how that test goes. You can also test transition times. Let's say you're an AVR manufacturer, and you want to test how fast the outputs switch in your AVR, or maybe you want to test how fast the AVR switches between two different audio formats or something like that. Minimizing those things are what give the customer a really good experience at the end of the day. A big complaint that we hear all the time from end users especially is they don't like how long things take to switch sometimes. So if you can measure that stuff during your manufacturing process, if you actually have some hard data and some hard science behind it, you can go back and kind of retool and re-engineer the product to make those things go faster if you want to. And like I said before, guys, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of onboard test patterns for troubleshooting systems, calibrating systems, setting up projectors, all kinds of cool stuff. Now, as far as control goes, obviously you're going to have the front panel controls that I kind of showed you before. That's going to let you navigate through the 7G, and you could fully use the 7G with just those front panel controls if you want to. There is also PC control software that we have for free on the Murideo website right now. So if you wanted to connect the 7G to your laptop and control it that way, you could totally do that as well. What's nice about that, when you start using these other software packages instead of just using the front panel controls, is in a lot of cases, and Matt's going to show us this later too, in a lot of cases you can see a lot more information in the software than you can just on the screen of the unit itself. There's also a web interface. I think I mentioned that before. If you network, you plug the 7G into a network, open up a web browser, pop in the IP address, you can have full control over the 7G via the web as well. If you're a software developer, a software company, and you want to use the 7G in such a way that you want to have control over it, give us a shout. We have the API available for you to download, and we can send it to you and whatnot, and you can use it. Lots of reporting and exporting. We're going to take a look later at a couple of tests in the 7G software, and what's great about this is we can keep a log of everything that happens with the HDMI transactions. We can keep a log of every button you've pressed on the 7G, and you can export that stuff as well. So if you're working on a project, maybe you're a manufacturer or an engineer, and you have to run some tests and email those tests to somebody that might not even be in your country. We make this reporting and exporting process very simple for you. So lots of cool stuff there. So I mentioned before we have the PC control software. The 7G also is going to work with CalMan calibration software. Some of you might be familiar with that, and also Light Illusion, another piece of calibration software that's out there. And then again, I did mention the 7-inch screen that's OLED and very easy to pick up, read, push buttons, and navigate through the menus. Now, one of the coolest things about the 7G, we would be crazy to make an HDMI 2.0 product right now and not have an upgrade path for it. The big talk right now in our industry is all about HDMI 2.1. Everybody's excited for those 8K and 48 gig signals. So we made a decision here to make this product upgradable. So as is, out of the box, fresh off the truck, if you will, the 7G is going to go for just under $6,000, $59.99. That includes you sending the unit back to us and us updating the hardware inside of it to get it up to spec to HDMI 2.1. We do expect that upgrade to be this year. We're hoping for about the middle of the year or so. But if you purchase the 7G now, we're going to give everybody a kind of a grace period to send that 7G back, and in that $59.99 price, that does include the HDMI 2.1 upgrade. So as you use the unit now, it's going to be HDMI 2.0 with some HDMI 2.1 features. And once this hardware upgrade is available, you'll send the unit to us. We'll send it back to you. It'll be HDMI 2.1, and you'll be ready to rock and roll for that. Okay. So I mentioned before all the test patterns. There's hundreds and hundreds of them. You can upload your own if you want to. But as far as the actual tests go, there's plenty of tests you can do in here. Now, if you start adding up all the different resolutions and frame rates and all the different tests you can do that we'll look at here in a little while, you could literally do over 1,000 tests with the 7G. So, we try to make this robust enough to where there was no situation where it was like, oh, we can't use that audio format with this resolution. And, we didn't want any of those limitations and restrictions. So we made this thing wide open. You can pretty much do whatever you want with it. So I want to show you guys some of the tests. I do want to mention too, in the accessories page, I talked about before with the microphone and the tripod and whatnot, you're also going to get this nice almost Pelican-like hard case that'll come with the 7G as well. It's a really nice hard case. It locks. You open it up. It's got nice foam in it. Everything's form-fitted and whatnot. So lots of cool stuff here. So over the next few slides, I want to show you guys a couple of things. We're going to look at some screenshots of the 7G. I'll show you how easy it is to kind of navigate through the menu and pick some audio and video formats and whatnot. And then we'll kick it over to Matt to actually see some of the tests in action. So let's look at some audio tests first. So on the very front panel of the 7G, we're going to have a main menu. And these are kind of all the different categories that we can do some testing with. So if I wanted to use this as a video generator, I would click this top box. If I wanted to run some video tests, some actually like motion, moving images, I can click this box right here. For this example, we're going to use the audio generator, but I could also do audio test here. I can do things with EDID and eARC and CDS here. CDS is a new term to a lot of us. I'll explain that in a little while. And then the system setup for the unit itself. So in this case, if we're going to do some audio test tones, here's what I would want to do. I would want to go to the main menu. I'd want to click audio generator. Once I click audio generator on this side of the screen, it's going to allow me to pick what type of signal I want. So it could be PCM, it could be Dolby, or as I mentioned before, that external audio input, you could plug something into the 7G and use that as your audio source as well. Once you pick the audio generator, and then in this example, we're going to pick PCM audio. Now on the options page on the right side of the screen, we have the audio channel configuration. We could also pick the sampling rate, the bit depth, which sine waves we want to listen to, which tones we want to play, and the volume control as well. So in this case, we pick PCM audio and then audio channel configuration. And check this out, I got everything from 2 channel all the way up to 7.1 channel. So regardless of what the situation is and what the surround sound configuration is, you know, I can run some tests through. So it's literally that simple, guys. This is great. You click the audio generator button, the PCM button, audio channel configuration, and then you pick the format that you want. Again, very, very easy to do some of these, set some of these outputs up. So let's talk a little bit about audio latency, and then we'll see a live example of it. So what is audio latency? There's a time from when the audio signal is sent out of the generator to where you actually hear it. And that's what we're trying to measure, is that time. And we want those numbers and we want those times to be as little as possible. The problem that happens is if the audio and the video don't get there at the same time, that's what we call lip sync errors. That's kind of what everybody knows as a lip sync errors. And I've seen it plenty of times in the past, and I know some of you guys probably have too, but the complaint from the end user or the customer is always the lips don't match up with the voice. Well, now you can do this test during the installation or during your calibration, and you can make sure that those errors are gone before you get that phone call and possibly that truck roll. What's really cool is you can measure the audio latency in one device or multiple devices in the signal chain. So as I showed you in this example before, we were looking at the audio latency test on this slide. So I can run a test through here, through one device. I can test multiple things at once. I can run multiple tests at once. I could put another, maybe an AVR in the signal chain as well. So by process of elimination, if I have the 7G connected to the TV, I can run that test and look in milliseconds. Then I can plug in the AVR, see if the latency changed. Then I can plug in an extender and see if the latency changed. And between doing all these, these now 3 different tests, I can figure out which device in the system is causing the lip sync error, and I can go to that device or another device in the system, and I can figure it out and fix it, which is really cool. So that's kind of what the audio latency test looks like under the hood. Bear with me a second so I can get back to that slide. Here's what it looks like under the hood. Here's what it looks like when you connect the 7G to the display to do this. So we've got an HDMI cable going from the 7G over to the television. Over here, we could also have a sound bar or an AVR, depends on what the system consists of. We're going to connect the microphone to the 7G, and we're going to put the microphone near the speaker. If it's a TV speaker, it's probably going to be under here somewhere. If it's an AVR, we might put the microphone on one of the tower speakers. If it's a soundbar, we might just drape the microphone over the soundbar, but no big deal. So once we run these tests, I'll show you a screenshot here in the next couple of slides, and you'll see the data that actually shows up on the screen. And what I love about it is it's very, very easy to read. You don't have to really be an engineer per se to kind of decipher all this data and tell exactly what it's talking about. The one thing I did want to mention, because this is very new, I've only learned about this in the last month or so because it is very, very new, but now we're dealing with something called CDS, the Capabilities Data Structure. So imagine you've got an eARC device, a sync device like a television, and you also have another eARC sync device like a AVR, and then you have a Blu-ray player somewhere in the line, or maybe a cable box or something. So you've got this whole entire system configured. Well, now that we're dealing with uncompressed Atmos over ARC, that's a pretty big deal. And we want to make sure that both the 2 devices that are connected to each other process and play those signals correctly. So you can almost think of CDS kind of like how we treat EDID, right? EDID is a communication protocol between the sync device and the source device. The sync device is saying, hey, here's what I'm capable of, this resolution, this frame rate, these audio formats, and da-da-da-da-da. Well, CDS is kind of like EDID, but it's for audio only. So if I connect these 2 devices together with an HDMI cable, I want to be able to test the CDS line to make sure that if the display is Atmos capable and the AVR is Atmos capable, that those signals are getting through and being processed correctly. So we're going to be in a position here very soon where we have to be able to test these eARC signals and these CDS signals. So what's great about the 7G is you can certainly do all of this and more. So what does that actually look like? So when we connect the input of the 7G to a display device and we run this test, you'll see something here called the SADs. That is the short audio descriptor. You'll notice here, and this is again kind of like EDID, the short audio descriptor gives you all of the different formats and different resolutions and different bit rates and different codecs that the device that you're testing is capable of. So when you look here, you can quickly determine this is Dolby Mat 7.1, 192, or 176, 196, or 88, or 48, or 44.1. So you can kind of test the capabilities of the display, the sync device, and maybe an AVR if it does this as well. So again, very easy to read. This is going to be under the eARC submenu, and again, we'll look at that in a live test here in the next few slides. So here's kind of what happens with the lip sync error when this test is ran. So this is the very beginning of the test, ground zero, if you will. Here's kind of what's going on in the background. So at ground zero, we send a signal, audio and a video signal out, okay? So the difference in time between the audio and the video, if there is a difference in time, that's where we have these lip sync problems. So in this particular case, if we look at this diagram, we send the signal out here. The video shows up here, but the audio doesn't start playing till here. So obviously there's a difference in time from here to here. That's what's going to cause these lip sync errors. Now this graph doesn't show us any specific numbers or anything like that, but this is just kind of what's going on as far as in the background. Now what this test looks like on the screen is much kind of easier to figure out, and we make this super simple for you. So here we are, ground zero, 0 milliseconds. That's when the signal is sent out. The audio doesn't play until here. That's 2 milliseconds. The video doesn't show up on the screen until here. That might be 142 milliseconds. So if I take 142 milliseconds, subtract the 2 milliseconds, I look over on this screen, the audio arrived 139 milliseconds before the video. How cool is that? Now I can go back to a device in the signal chain and I can adjust that delay for 139 milliseconds for the audio, and now my lip sync is back in order. Great example if you're an integrator. Maybe you're a manufacturer and you're still doing some testing on a display or on a video device. You can do these tests on your device. You can gather the data here, go back to the engineering team and say, hey guys, we're still a little slow on the audio. We have to make these tweaks and we have to do this. Because guys, I'm telling you, all the stuff with latency that we're talking about, especially when we start talking about input lag in the next few slides, these are all things that have been headaches for integrators and consumers for a very, very long time. So we wanted to make this product to get rid of some of those errors and really to help you guys. So with that being said, I want you guys to see some of these tests in real life. So let me pop over to Matt Murray, our CTO, and he should be up any moment. There you go. How you doing, Matt?
Hello, everybody.
Good, good.
So
I can hear you.
Everybody can hear me. All right. So
Yeah,
we're here in a quasi lab. We've set up a little demo station just to kind of show how this connection works. Why don't we turn on the lights for just a second, just so I can point out the sensor. So all we're doing right now is we're just going to run a quick test with the microphone here connected to the 7G and the sensor on the screen. So the sensor is obviously going to read the video signal. This is going to read your audio signal. And then on the 7G, what you can actually do is set up specifically what you want in terms of video signal and audio signal type. So we can choose whatever video resolution we want, whether we want HDR or not, whether we want Dolby Vision or not, what type of audio we want, if we're going to do 2-channel Dolby, any of the Dolby audio types, you can choose that there. So you construct the test however you want to construct it. So that's one of the things that makes it a very powerful tool, is you're not limited to say, okay, we can run this one test and now I know the result of this in 4K, but what if I'm running 1080p or even, 1080 120? So one of the interesting observations on HDMI 2.1 is video latency actually, latency actually goes down by a lot when you're using higher frame rates. So now it's important to understand where these things are different and how people need to manage their audio. But I'll unmute this and go ahead and just start it. And you can hear the beep happening. So it's that simple. This is all built into the device, and then I have the simple measurement like Jason had showed on the screen previously, indicating the audio latency as a standalone measurement, the video latency as a standalone measurement, and then I also get told video arrived 79 milliseconds before audio. So it can't come out in any more crystal clear language than that. So that's an example of testing a display. Obviously, you can put intermediate devices in to figure out latency measurements and stuff. And then the other generator over here, which we were going to try to show the screens, but there's too much of a glare. So what I'll probably do is have Jason show this as a picture, but we can do the same thing coming out of the HDMI input. So the device is a signal generator at its core. So we do have an HDMI in and an HDMI out. The HDMI output does what you see here, but the HDMI input is actually generating audio out as well. So this has been a challenge for a long time because getting known signals input into HDMI outputs for testing audio types, especially now with eARC, it's going to be very, very popular for consumers. So this is becoming increasingly important. So without taking into consideration the CDS, we can generate the ARC or eARC audio signal from the device, giving you, true scientific testing. And you can make this measurement that you see being done here. We can measure the audio latency. We can see everything in the CDS, so we can really analyze what's happening with that audio back channel. So those are just to kind of quickly describe how those tests work. But I think we're going to go back to Jason for a little more, and then we're going to set up and show you guys kind of a little test pattern tour here as well, so you can see what we're doing with video.
That's great, Matt. Thank you so much. So now that you guys kind of saw some of the audio stuff, we want to jump into some of the video capabilities of the 7G. So remember a few pages ago, we chose audio generator, and then we chose PCM audio, then we chose our speaker configuration and whatnot. We're going to do basically the same thing, but I want to show you guys some of the video menus. So in this case, we're going to click the video generator button on the main menu, and over here we're going to have our different options for setting up the video output. So first box is timing and resolution. Then we can select our bazillions of test patterns that are under this box. We can choose our color space options here. We can decide what we want to do with our wide color gamut, our bit depth and color depth, which version of HDCP we want, and even could be none depending on the application. Whether you're going to be using HDMI or DVI to run these tests, and then a full HDR menu as well. So in this case, I just want to show you guys something very simple, the timing and resolution pages. So we click video generator. Once we pick video generator, then we can pick the format or the universe we want to live in. That could be UHD. That's probably the most common right now. If you guys work in commercial theater and commercial spaces, you might be doing 4K or 2K DCI. Normal 1080 HD stuff is here, standard definition as well. Maybe you need some VESA compliant resolutions, maybe for a boardroom or classroom or something where more PCs are being used and not necessarily video products. We still have lots and lots of 3D stuff going on out there in the world. People just love 3D to death, and they don't want to get rid of it. So we want to make sure there was lots of 3D patterns in here for you as well. Then you have a whole slew of custom patterns. As I mentioned before, you can upload your own video clips and audio clips and test patterns and all these things. You can also pick custom resolutions and design custom resolutions. We did some work recently with a church in South Florida they needed a very specific resolution to match a custom built screen that they had made. So you can do custom resolutions as well, and then your EDID menus here as well. So for this example, I want to show you the different resolution options for UHD, 4K, DCI, and VESA. So if we pick the UHD box right here, now we can go through and we can pick 3840 by 2160 at whatever frame rate we want to, right? So for our friends overseas, we can do 50. For everybody here on this side of the world, we can do 60. We can also do 24, 25 again for folks overseas. So everything is here. Every legal signal is here for 4K. If you're doing 4K DCI, boom, here's 4096 by 2160 at all the same different frame rates as well. If we were to pick the VESA selection here, we've got a bunch of them over here. Maybe you're doing VGA, maybe you're doing XVGA. You know, there's a ton of different VESA patterns here, or resolutions rather. And of course, again, you can also upload your own custom ones if you want to. So very easy, lots of selections. Now, if we were to pick the video generator option, you get a nice screen here that shows you which test pattern is which. So they're not listed here by name. You actually have a little thumbnail or a picture of it, which is kind of cool because if you're looking for a specific one, you can spot it a little bit easier. You're going to use these test patterns to do lots of different things. Troubleshooting. You need to send a 4K test pattern through a system to troubleshoot it. Maybe it's not getting 4K on the other end. We're also going to use these test patterns to do lots of stuff with the video. Maybe you have a white balance that's way too blue. Maybe you're setting up a projector and you need very specific geometry test patterns for 235 screens or something like that. But plenty of stuff you can do in here and plenty of test patterns. And like I said before, there's test patterns in here that from all these different places like Spears and Montel and Digital Video Solution or Diversified Video Solutions and lots of stuff. But again, you can upload your own if you want to. So I want to show you guys the video latency test. It's going to be very similar to the audio latency test, but instead we're going to use the light diode instead of the microphone. So we've got HDMI from the device to the TV. Then we've got the diode connected, and we're going to stick the diode with the suction cup right in the middle of the screen so we can see that flashing box. Now, why is this so important? If the video is getting there too slow, you have what's called input lag, and any TV review that you've read in the last 5 years or more really, input lag is a huge thing right now. If you've done any gaming at all, you know how important input lag is. So being able to test your television in this case, or maybe an AVR for input lag, those teeny tiny input lag numbers, that's what the gamers and those types of guys are looking for. The lower the input lag, the better. So being able to test for that's going to help you build your product better. If you're doing installations, being able to test for that will help you make adjustments in the system so the customer doesn't call you up and you have to make a truck roll back out there. So it's a very easy test, just like the audio test. Now, here's what we're looking at on this diagram. We're going to test an entire system here. So we're going to do a few different things. I'm going to set my audio and video to 4K, 444, Dolby Vision, all the good stuff. We're going to test these devices. At the same time, we can also test the latency of the system, see if there's any lip sync problems. So I can run these tests, and I can run the test for video and audio to these devices. I can also at the same time see if there's any latency being introduced by these devices as well. So what I might do first is connect directly to the TV, see if there's any latency, then connect to one of these devices, a soundbar and AVR, see if there's any latency there. Now, if I'm a manufacturer, I can say, okay, our AVR is introducing 100 milliseconds of latency. We can go back and retool. Same thing with the soundbar. But at the same time, we can also test for different formats and different audio codecs as well. So again, you can run multiple tests at once, and you can test multiple devices at once as well. Now, this is a big one right now. This test pattern has been floating around for I feel like a couple of years. You could find it online and download it, but you never really knew where the test pattern came from. So we got a hold of this test pattern, and it is bit perfect and native and all that good stuff inside the 7G generator. So what we're looking at here, this test pattern has some script written across the screen from the left to the right. And we've got all the primary colors, all the secondary colors, and then we have a couple of shades of gray in there as well. So what we want to do for this test is we want to make sure that the text on the screen is as clear as possible. And that can be caused by a couple of things. The most obvious thing when the text looks blurry and distorted is usually has something to do with either scaling or sharpness being too high. or maybe the TV or the display of the projector is in some sort of zoom or stretch mode. Maybe the
So
sharpness
feel
is set
free to
way
reach
too
out.
high on the
Hope
display,
you guys
and
have a
that can
great
cause some
holiday,
distortion and some blurry
keep
text as
cranking out
well.
those
The other
really
thing that
nice
can cause
jobs,
blurry
and if
text
there's anything we
is
can do to help
if
you,
there's an error
feel free to reach
or
out. Thanks again.
or maybe just
See you next
a
time.
specific device is not doing a fantastic job necessarily of converting from RGB to component or back and forth. So if we were to take the 7G generator and output a chroma subsampling of like say 420 or 422, the TV receives that chroma subsampling number, has to up it to 444 and then convert it back to RGB because that's how the pixels work and that's how our eyes work. So if I send this particular TV a RGB signal and the text looks nice and clear, then great, no big deal. That tells me that I need to set my source up for RGB. If I do that same exact test, but I set the 7 generator up to 420 or 422, and now the text looks blurry, I know that the TV might not be doing the best job possible of doing those RGB to component conversions. So being able to run this test, not only can you set up your display the best way possible, you can also set up your source the best way possible too, to make sure that that text is nice and clear. Now for video, going between 420, 422, 444, for moving video, a lot of people can't see a difference in this, but it becomes very important if you're in a situation where you're trying to read something. So maybe you're in a classroom environment or a boardroom environment or a conference room type place, and you're going to be constantly looking at text on the screen. Maybe you work in advertising, you're constantly looking at text on the screen. Maybe you work at the New York Stock Exchange and you're constantly looking at text on the screen. It's super, super important to get this display set up correctly and to get your source set up correctly to make sure that text is as clear as possible. And again, with the 7G, you can test for all of these things. How about smartboards? I'm starting to see those more and more now. We put a couple into the headquarters in Sioux Falls. They're very, very cool. They do transmit audio, especially voices and things like that. So if you're installing a smartboard into a, or you're designing a smartboard even, we can do these ARC and eARC tests to make sure that the audio and the video is getting there at the same time and making sure that the correct audio is getting back to the source. So here's how we would do this. We would go HDMI in, and then HDMI would come back out over ARC. We can run these two things simultaneously, and we can test any delays between the two, and we can test all of the codecs and make sure that this device or this smartboard is outputting the correct codec and doing everything that it's supposed to do. So simultaneous testing on ARC and eARC, another very cool feature. Something we've been doing for years, if you guys have ever used the 6A and 6G or the Fox and the Hound, is being able to read EDID. Super, super essential, especially when we introduced, when 4K and UHD and HDR was introduced to the system, to the industry rather. So a situation you might have, maybe you're dealing with a distributed video system, and that one particular TV that's in the upstairs, guest bathroom, it's not showing 4K for some reason, but other TVs in the system are. So I can take the 7G, I can read the EDID of that TV to see why it might not be accepting or liking or showing the 4K signal. And then I can make adjustments from there, make a decision at least. The other thing I can do is I can emulate the EDID from a known working TV that's maybe in the living room perhaps. Once I capture the EDID into the 7G, now I can go back to the rack or go back to the equipment, and I can start testing outputs and trying to figure out exactly why that one TV is giving me problems. So again, we've done this in other products in the past, but I just wanted to point out that we did not take that away by any means. You can still do all of your EDID testings with the 7G. Okay, what else? So I mentioned before about emulating the EDID. Now, what's really cool about this is, let's say you're at the engineering level and you're developing a product, or you're maybe you're actually physically writing the EDID for your product. What's great about the 7G is once I read the EDID from a specific display or sync device, that stuff can all be kind of cataloged and exported, if you will. If you guys have ever seen this before, the EDID comes in as this hex code, and it's like dozens and dozens and dozens of characters long. And humans make mistakes, and humans build EDID. So if you need to see the EDID information down to the hex code level, you can do that with the 7G and with the software. Lots and lots of detail there if that's what you need for your project you're working on. The other big thing that we want you guys to be able to do is test the integrity of the infrastructure of the system. So we mentioned before, being able to test things like matrix switches and extenders. So here's the situation we've got on the screen right now. I've got a 7G connected to a matrix switch. The matrix switch output's connected to one of our 6A, another Murideo product, a 6A analyzer. So what I'm really testing here is the matrix switch. So I can set the 7G for Dolby Vision, 4K, HDR, 4K, or whatever I want, and I can make sure that that signal is getting through the matrix switch. Now, how am I going to know? Well, the 6A analyzer on the other end is going to tell me in the little screen here, or in the software if you use their software. That's going to tell us everything that's coming out of the matrix switch. So what goes in should be what comes out, and that's what we're doing when we're doing this, is we're testing this matrix switch. Now, what might cause this matrix switch to not pass a 4K signal? Maybe it's an EDID problem. Again, you can read the EDID here, no big deal. Maybe the matrix switch is okay, but it turns out these are old HDMI cables. No big deal. I can use this piece with this piece, and we can test the cables as well. So regardless of what's in between the source and the display, we can test that for everything. And this is just kind of the same thing down here, but instead of a matrix switch and extender. But you guys get the idea. We can send signal through, and hopefully that signal that goes in is what comes out on the other end. And if not, I can go back and I can retool this, or maybe I can do some EDID management if I'm an installer, and get that system up and running the way it's supposed to. So now that we've talked a little bit about some of the video tests, I am going to switch back over to Matt Murray, and we'll see some of that stuff live action. Oh, Matt, I can't hear you.
Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a test pattern tour here and talk about some of the video features. But first, behind me, I'm going to try to get a pattern that maybe is a little more visible. Let's see. Something like that, maybe. So what you're looking at is the diversified video solutions test pattern. So this is an example. I'll just talk about how these things are implemented. So all the test patterns in this device are raw YUV video frames, or they are directly generated by the FPGA inside of the machine. So everything coming out of here is pure raw, uncompressed, unencoded video. So one thing that we can do, since we have about 2 terabytes in here, so we were able to load a lot of stuff into it. So you really have a lot of firepower when you're talking about the types of tests you want to run. And one of the examples here is this pattern behind me. It's actually flashing. So you notice this is normally found on disk, so people can do this, but you really aren't getting it from straight from the source. You're having to go through some type of decoding method on a Blu-ray player or something of that nature. So we've given them to you here. If you want to stop the flashing, we've made it so that you can just basically pause the video, and you can have a different view of the test pattern. So I want to show you guys just a couple that are available. So this is from the diversified video suite. So these are HDR clipping patterns. So we can do white level clipping, HDR clipping, so we can see how things are doing with tone mapping and different things like that. Different HDR metadata for some different patterns and stuff. But one of the things that we got asked for a lot was to put more evaluation type patterns. So you can see behind me, I'm just showing some of the raw files we have for actually looking at things like skin tones and landscapes and colors, and making sure that things look right to your eye. So you have some reference material. The ability to do video has given us the ability to do things like this, so we can look at frame interpolation, judder, things like that. Then these again are all from Diversified Video Solutions. I have ISF test patterns. Those are all here as well. So we have, and one thing is, you notice I'm changing, when the patterns are changing quickly, it's because it's changing between the same format. When I change to a different format, which if I'm changing patterns, sometimes that'll happen because I'm changing to the raw original format of the pattern. So that's a unique feature. It's not going to be automatically scaled. You can scale these if you want to, but the idea is that you have it all natively. And one other thing I want to show you, so here's an example, and I'll flip over to my computer so you can see how I'm controlling it with the PC. If anyone has ever taken an ISF class, we could put video files on short test patterns like this one here. So it looks like we have some kind of problem with this video coming from one of Stacy Spears test patterns. So that's pretty interesting stuff. I'm going to go and show you guys an actual video here. So this is one of the other really fun things that we're able to do is these are looped video files, real landscape videos. You can see there's a lot. These are all done in HDR. These are done from spicy pixels, and we can have really nice landscapes for identifying stuff. These are 24-frame video files. We have included on here, there's a total of 19 videos for you to choose from. And then I have we have a couple of patterns in here that are already done in 120. So these are video files that are 120 frames in HDR, so you can test things with this type of resolution and verify things. And I have the ability to upload my own clips and stuff here too. So I'm going to switch over and just show my screen here. And I think it's showing now. Okay. All right. So if you look, this is the PC software. So this looks a lot like the web interface does. And with this PC software, it just gives you easier way to control. We control it with USB. We control it with serial. We control it with IP. So lots of different ways to do it. But you can see the multitude of the patterns in here. So, I'm just going to kind of click through the list. You can see how much of this stuff is available for you. We got a lot of feedback when we were building this machine. The common theme was people want more things that are valid to them, which, everybody's doing different tests and stuff. So we've given as much stuff as we can think of in here. Here's some from the Professional Video Alliance. So if anybody takes those classes, those patterns are here too. Some from Sony here, Spears and Munsell. And then we have the user patterns. So those are your patterns. So you put your own patterns on here. Whatever you want to put on, you can put on. And you have shortcuts. So this is one nice thing that people testing video devices, display devices have asked for a long time is I'd like to be able to, pick out a few of the most commonly used test patterns that I use. And that's exactly what this does. So you can store any test pattern in the machine as a shortcut and recall it. And you can see here's all of the videos that are in here. And again, you can see right here, your user video clips. There's no time limit on how big those can be, but there's only about 400 gigs of memory left. So, in theory, I think you could probably load a, 5-minute video or so, maybe longer. Audio generator, audio test. Here's a look. I think I'm connected to a sync here. Yep. So this is a different view of the EDID. So it comes back, you can export this, all of the human language stuff is down here. So everything is pretty usable. You can see the CDS right here. One of the other things that's on here is CEC. So I can send CEC commands and then see the responses come back here so I can do some CEC testing. So pretty robust system in terms of the software. And then I've got my system set up here too, so I can do other basic control elements there. So that's kind of an overview of this software and what you're able to do in terms of test patterns and video setup. It's got the, as Jason said, you've got HDR, 10, Dolby Vision, HLG. You can fully customize your own HDR, so you can add your own HDR metadata in here. We can inject and store our own info frames. So there's really really a lot that you can do. I can build custom resolutions up to 120 frames per second. This is unique enhancement from the 6G, where we were only able to do up to 9 gig per second custom resolutions. Now we can go all the way up to 18 gig custom resolutions. You can create and store those there. You could do the RGB triplet. So one of the other big things with this product, especially if you're CalMan or Lightspace user, is you get the ability to recall RGB triplets. So those are specific colors called up by their their RGB coordinates, which historically how you would do this is use a conversion table. So you'd actually take 8-bit, convert it to 10 or 12. This is doing everything raw and native. So if I recall a 10-bit triplet, the generator is actually sending it in 10-bit, not using any type of conversion. So very, very useful from a video standpoint. And with that, I will pass back to Jason, and then we'll talk about some software, and then I'll show you this other piece of software here after he goes brief overview.
Great, Matt. Thank you so much. And let me get my screen back up here, and boom, that should be it. So the last piece we wanted to cover with you guys was some of the software and some of the analysis that you can do with it. There's 3 things we're going to look at here today. First, we're going to take a quick look at the protocol analyzer software. That's where you can see some very, very detailed information, including down to literally down to the bits to almost see the ones and zeros. We can record HDMI transactions and see exactly what's happening in what order and how long things take, down to the picosecond. So if you're monitoring HDMI transaction, once you hit a button or plug something in, you can see exactly what happens after that, down to step by step down to the picosecond. There's also a device log. So that keeps a history of everything that's happened with HDMI and everything that's happened with the generator itself. So if you're ever in a situation where you're doing some troubleshooting, or maybe you have to send the unit to us for some reason, we can take a look at this device log and figure out exactly what happened. If you're buried deep doing some testing and you kind of lose track of where you were and you're not sure what you did on the previous page, you can always go back and see what buttons you pushed. So all that stuff is logged and it's exportable and all that good stuff. Again, all your HDMI transaction, ARC and eARC is all included in that. Then of course you also have the PC control software, which you kind of had a brief look at there with Matt just a moment ago. You can connect over RS-232, serial, IP, USB, all the above, and control the 7G from a computer if you'd like to. And then of course you can always control it from the front panel as well. Now if you go to our website, murideo.com, and you click on the 7G, if you scroll down towards the bottom, there's a couple things I want you guys to take a look at. Number one, we are giving all of these softwares away with the unit right off the bat, at least. So if you go to our website and you click on the 7G, click PC software, you can download the control software, device software, protocol analyzer software, and then there's 2 specific pieces that will allow you to upload your own audio test and your own video test as well. The other thing that's on the Murideo website, Matt and I have both mentioned a couple times now how many test patterns are built into the 7G. Now, the last thing we want is for you guys to pull up test patterns and look at the screen and go, I don't know what I'm looking at here. What am I supposed to do? So we went through and we defined every single test pattern in the 7G. That's going to be a living, breathing document, if you will, as as things get added and as the 7G evolves over time. But yeah, right now you can go on to the website and you can get descriptions and Matt had on the screen before a group of people sitting in a restaurant, and that's a reference image. So there's descriptions on the website on what you're supposed to be looking for, the skin tones, where you're supposed to see shadows and things like that, and really just what things are supposed to look like. So we don't want you guys to feel like you got all these test patterns, you don't know how to use them. Feel free to jump over to our website and get descriptions of all those test patterns if you'd like to. Okay, now we'll take a quick look at the analysis protocol software. These are things that dive really deep in, probably more engineering level stuff, but if you like to see this data and you like to kind of geek out, you're certainly welcome to. So we're going to connect the HDMI cable from the 7G over to the display. We're going to connect the USB cable from the 7G over to the laptop as well. On the next screen, I want to show you kind of what the software looks like, and then Matt will give us kind of a more of a demo and a little bit more in depth. But if I want to be able to test things like hot plug, 5-volt CEC commands, as Matt had just mentioned before, If I want to check the I2C stuff, if I want to check eARC stuff, I can do all of that with the protocol software. So let's take a quick peek at one of those screens. You guys can see what it looks like. So if we look on the left side of the screen, these are everything that's happening with the HDMI in this particular instance, at least. So you can see, again, down to the picosecond, when you send a command or do whatever you're going to do, everything is listed right here in order. And this is all loggable and exportable and all that good stuff. You've got some buttons down here that will let you run the test and start the test and stop the test and pick the test you want to do and things like that. And over here on this screen, you can see what we're looking at right now is the wave view. And we're actually seeing like when the ones and zeros are coming in. So you can look at a specific length of time, you can look at a specific transaction, you can look at a specific whatever you want to do. So very, very cool. Lots and lots of details here for somebody who needs to get that deep into it. You certainly can. This is just a screenshot of the device log, software. Again, this shows you exactly. In this case, when we took this screenshot, it looks like somebody was going through and looking at different test patterns, how long they looked at each test pattern, the date. Of course, a new one out of the box is not going to say 1970. This is probably old firmware. But yeah, the date, the time, down to the second, what somebody may have pushed. So if you ever find yourself lost in a menu and you're not sure, not sure how to get back, you could do things like a quick power cycle. That's no big deal. All this stuff is going to be logged anyway. Where this really becomes helpful is if maybe you have to troubleshoot the unit for some reason. This is like other companies use a logging type of system. So if I recently had an issue with a product at my own home, and when I contacted the manufacturer, they wanted to see the device log. So I had to do a little work on my end, push a couple buttons, and email them the device log. And once they got the device log, they were able to look at it and say, oh, here's the problem. So instead of guessing when you're doing troubleshooting and trying to figure out what might be going on, we wanted to make this device logger for multiple reasons, but that is a big one. As far as the software goes, Matt kind of gave us a sneak peek of that last time he was with us here. But again, we also work with CalMan. We also work with Light Illusion. If you've done calibration work in the past, this is nothing different than what you're used to. Your colorimeter is going to hook up USB to your laptop. The signal generator is going to hook up to your laptop via USB, and then HDMI comes out into the display. So, CalMan right now, they've made tons and tons of progress on the auto cal functionality with certain manufacturers of certain displays. And if you guys have used that before and had good luck with it, you'll know that calibration times are getting cut in half, in some cases even more than that. So the 7G is certainly equipped and ready to go with those software packages as well. So with that being said, I want to kick it over to Matt one last time. We'll look at some of these softwares that we just kind of covered in the last few slides, and then we will wrap it up, and you guys can get on your way and finish out the rest of your day. Matt, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, fire up your camera when ready.
All righty. So you should see my screen here too.
Don't see your screen. There it goes. Perfect.
All righty. So what I want to show you is just real quickly, because I know we're getting towards the end, just how this software works, in case anybody is wanting to do the protocol analysis. The 7G has a source and a sink built into it. The sink is primarily for generating audio signals, as discussed before, but we can do some protocol analysis on HDMI in and out. And if you look at the software, I'll just take some data that was sampled earlier today, nothing in particular, but just to show you how it works. We've got a parsing screen over here on the left, and all that does is that separates out data. So if I want to specifically find, CEC or something like that, I can find it, and then I can go look in more detail, and it will actually pull me to that position in time that I've clicked over here, so I can look at everything that happened around it. So pretty useful. I can look at the serial data and the clock. I can parse that information out. I can parse out the ARC and the eARC information. Again, I can click on a time. Click on an event, and then it will pull that event over here. So pretty useful tool. This wave view, this is just ones and zeros. It's just on and off. It's just digital data, so you can see when events happen. And the point of this is so that you can see how things are happening together. if I choose one of these check boxes over here, I can go to like next event and see now it takes me to the next event that happened with eARC. So I can then go back into the list view and further analyze this as well. If I go and look, I'll go to show you some of the detailed view stuff. So that is going to show you in detail the eARC and the eARC out, the I2C in, I2C out. And I can, you know, choose these events, and then I can go and see my detailed analysis over here on the other side. So same thing with the I2C, we can see all of the transactions and the events and all of the things happening with HDMI from a protocol standpoint. So for those of you that know, have ever needed this type of information, you know how valuable it is, and I think for the first time, this is a, you know, this is very affordable. I'll say for, you know, what you can do with this. Right now, we're giving this away for free with the 7G during the launch period. So yeah, I would highly recommend downloading this and using this, especially if you're in the product development space and engineering space. So. With that, I will cut it off here because we're running about 10 minutes late, and thank you guys all for your time.
Great, Matt. Thank you so much. Let me make sure you guys can see my screen. And we will finish up here. Okay, so there we go. All right, back in action. So with that being said, thanks again, Matt. Now, who should be using the 7G? Who should be buying the 7G? Really, if you're working with HDMI in any capacity at all, this is a product to absolutely consider. We gave plenty of examples for you know, very, very detailed things that you might want to see if you're an engineer, maybe you work for a manufacturer. Plenty of examples here if you're a calibrator or an installer on how this product is going to make your life easier, make you get through jobs quicker and troubleshooting and things like that. If you're a broadcaster post-production, you know, you're probably going to be doing some calibration work and some infrastructure testing and things like that. So, you know, everybody who works with HDMI, this should definitely be a product to consider, because again, you know, our job as a company, what we strive to do is to make products to make your guys' life easier. And hopefully this product will be something that will make you work faster, work smarter, work better, maybe develop better products and do better installations as well, and save some money on truck rolls and troubleshooting and things like that. So just a couple last things about the generator itself. This does come with a 2-year warranty. If you check out the support page, I did kind of point this out before. All that software that we talked about, it's all down here, downloadable for free. On the same exact page that you'll see on Murideo.com, that's where you're also going to see all the test patterns defined. If you have any questions, there's a couple of numbers up on the screen you can always call. If you guys have any specific questions about the generator or anything Murideo related for that matter, you can give us an email anytime at support@murideo.com. And then of course we have some online forums where you guys can share tips and tricks and see some news and articles and things like that. That's going to be support.murideo.com. Everything that you guys have seen today as far as manuals, all the specifications, quick start guides, definitions of test patterns, but everything that is related to the 7G, we've got loaded up already up on the murideo.com/7G. So feel free to check that stuff out at any point. If you guys have any questions that you might have directly for me, my email is very easy. It's jason@avproglobal.com. Last but not least, we've got a specification sheet here. I'm not going to go through everything. It's a lot of numbers and a lot of techie stuff, but if you do need to know some of this stuff or you want to look it up, it's also available on the website as well if you need to see exactly what kind of formats that the 7G supports. And with that being said, guys, thank you so much.